Once upon a time, there used to be an old Silk Route which enabled the trade to spread far and wide across disparate continents and helped all the people to come together, different cultures. It made a cauldron of cultures. But soon after, there were some empires who wanted a larger share of the barter pie. So now the time had come to explore the seas, to take to the seas, to take to the sails, and there began the actual navigation, which we have all studied about in world history. So that naval supremacy allowed the colonial powers to exercise such brute force and helped in the concept that is known as imperialism. Fast forward to the Cold War era, there was a rapid and drastic growth in the arms arsenal, and even the sky was not the limit. But now, in today's world, there is no more a hegemony, there is no more a bipolar world. Even the hydrosphere, our oceans, are up for grabs. And in such an ominous and strategical scenario, our great nation India refuses to be left behind. And one exemplary example that was unprecedented in nature and which was unveiled a few days ago by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, is now online. That is INS Vikrant, our very own indigenous carrier. So we'll be talking about in depth about that. Now you see, again, my approach has to be very comprehensive as well as precise. So I'll be dealing with the specific concepts, and at the end I will also be discussing one or two prelims and mains question, and as a special bonus I'll be discussing some few prelims facts which have recently gained attention and some mapping part as well. So without further ado, so this time I've taken the liberty to make the presentation more beautiful, even more presentable, so that it engages all of you. So here we have the INS Vikrant, that is India's first ever indigenous carrier which finally sails. So there are different types of ships in the Navy. We'll be discussing those and the important ones as well, because it becomes very important from the point of view of prelims. So we have the carriers, we have the destroyers, and we have the frigates. We'll come to that. So this was the news in all the newspapers. If you have been following the newspapers, the daily current affairs regularly. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he inaugurated the first made in India aircraft carrier and calling it a historic occasion. Now what is important here is it was built at a cost of rupees 20,000 crore and it was organized at the Cochin Shipyard Limited in Kochi, Kerala. Some shipbuilding organizations or some important areas where shipbuilding, the Navy shipbuilding take place, we'll be discussing those also. One is Cochin Shipyard Limited, one is Mazgaon in Mumbai, and one is Garden Reach in Kolkata. So these facts you need to remember, you need to retain, and I'll be discussing that. And if you watch the video, you follow along with me, just keep an open mind and you will be able to retain these facts. So here are some appetizers, that is some initial facts to get us revved up and further strengthen our so some icons I have used here just for some fun purpose. So here INS Vikrant has been built with state-of-art automation and is the largest ship ever built in the maritime history of India with a displacement of 45,000 tons. That is, we are talking about the displacement of water. Okay. Then it has a large amount of indigenous equipment and machinery, and it has gathered equipment, it has procured a lot of machinery from over 100 MSMEs. Now time and again we have we talk about the decentralization. So it is the MSMEs, the micro, small and medium enterprises, even under the Atmanirbhar Abhiyan, even during the COVID, these were the industries which actually hold the future, which they are the ones which are going to build a new India, a progressive India. Then Vikrant got its name from the illustrious predecessor. So it's we can say the name has been repeated, but it played a vital role in the 1971 war. Obviously, the Vikrant, INS Vikrant, which has been unveiled recently, it is different from this ship. It has been indigenously built. This had more of its legacy. This 1971 war, which was INS Vikrant, it had the British legacy in its name. We'll be discussing that also. Then this is the full meal. So again, some infographics for you. So here we can see the Vikrant is the largest ship in India's maritime history. It is as large as the size of 2 football fields. If you're a follower of football, so recently there is a lot of debate around Cristiano Ronaldo also, and his association with Manchester United. Anyways, and its hangar is the size of 2 Olympic-sized pools. So hangar is basically where all the aircrafts are stored. If you have seen Marvel's Avengers, there is Nick Fury, who uses a great large aircraft carrier in his whatever that fictional ship is. So anyways, then it is a floating city with 18 floors, and it has 14 decks, 2,300 compartments, around 1,000, and it can hold or accommodate around 1,500 sea warriors. And it also caters to the modern food requirements and even has its own sewage treatment plant and other urban amenities. Then of course it's an aircraft carrier, and we have a mix of around 30 types of aircrafts. Then we had the MiG-29, the Camo 31, the MH-60R multi-role helicopters, and of course the advanced light helicopters and the light combat aircraft. So obviously we'll be adding more, we'll be strengthening this aircraft capability more. Then this is another infographic that I happened to obtain. So we have already discussed this 2,300 compartments, crew of around 1,700 it is written. I had earlier written 1,500, so 200 more can be. Then there is the air assets, the MiG-29, Camo 31 helicopters and American built MH-60R. Then we have already discussed, it is the flight deck equivalent to the size of 2 football fields. Then the important things we have discussed, all amenities, advanced sewage treatment plant, even a dedicated hospital complex. And here the width is 62 meters and the length is 262 meters, and we have discussed it has a displacement of 45,000 tons. And one more fact which will be the recently unveiled INS Vikrant has a capacity of maximum speed of 28 knots or 56 kilometers per hour, whereas the erstwhile Vikrant had a much lower maximum speed. So now the story of INS Vikrant will, like in my earlier lectures also, will not just India has got Rafale, okay, India has procured Barak missiles, okay, India has developed its own. So these are just facts. But now comes, because geography, when we talk about geography, history, polity, when we talk about all the GS papers of UPSC, no topic or no current affair topic is separate or disparate. They are all intertwined, they are all entwined, and they are linked with each other. Okay, so this is interesting history which I told, that INS Vikrant has its roots in the British history. So it was first, it had a number known as R11, and it was inducted in the British Royal Navy as HMS Her Majesty's Service, Her Majesty's ship, and it was commissioned in British Royal Navy in 1945. A lot of things were going on in 1945 that I'll leave you to relate to modern history. Then after World War II, the ship's construction was stopped, and it was later sold to India in 1957. Always we see, every asset, it has a depreciation, it is prone to depreciation, and so it was, when it was not very feasible to employ it or make it available for the Navy operations, it was sold to India, and then it underwent a 4-year-long refitting and at Harland and Wolff Yard in Belfast, Ireland. Then the ship arrived in India on November 1961, and after that refitting, after that renovation, it joined the Indian Navy fleet, and it was then commissioned, and the commissioning unveiling event was held by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the Prime Minister at that attended by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Then the INS, the most important point, it played a very decisive role in India's victory against Pakistan in the 1971 war, and it helped by blockading the Pakistani, because basically the West Pakistan was at war with the erstwhile East Pakistan, which India helped liberate. Now it is Bangladesh. So it played a great role. It played a pivotal role in defeating Pakistan, and so it was by blockading various land forces and the water forces, and then it was decommissioned in 1997 and laid anchored off, where it was treated as just another museum. And ultimately, when it became too expensive to maintain that ship, it was ultimately sold off to Darukhana shipbreaker, and it was finally scrapped. So this is the pivotal or cherished history that we should know behind INS Vikrant, because it is not just about fanfare, or we need to be proud of what the Indian Navy has achieved over the past several years. Then again, we had talked about this interesting fact that the newly commissioned INS Vikrant has a maximum designated speed of 28 knots or 56 kilometers per hour, and it has an endurance of 7,500 nautical miles. That is, in one go it can travel to this much distance. Now when we talk about nautical miles, one thing might come to your, that is UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention of Law on Law of the Seas. So we had the 12 nautical miles, 200 nautical miles, terms such as exclusive economic zone. So all these are interconnected, like I have reiterated time and again. So these things, how to link the various facts in UPSC become very important. Okay, another interesting fact, since we are now in the big leagues, we are slowly overcoming. Recently, you might have also heard that India has now become the 5th largest economy, overcoming UK, United Kingdom. So again, some important aircraft carriers which have been pivotal in the navy prowess of the various countries of the world. Here, just for make things interesting, I've just taken the liberty to put the maps. So first, obviously, we have the USA, that is one of the famous aircraft carriers, that is USS Gerald R. Ford class, which has served for a long time. Then for China, we have the Fujian. Then for UK, we have Queen Elizabeth class. Obviously, when Britain is associated, then Queen it has to be there. Then Admiral Kuznetsov for Russia, Charles de Gaulle for France, and Cavour for Italy. Now again, interesting facts, if you go back to world history, we are talking about the mapping and international relations. See how many papers it is encompassing. So here, Charles de Gaulle, if you remember this name, Mr. Charles de Gaulle was one of the leaders of France during the World War, and he was one of the leaders who catalyzed the army, who led the army against the Nazi Germany. Cavour. Now Cavour, if you have read world history, there were three prominent leaders, three prominent persons who were involved in the unification of Italy in around 1861. So one was Cavour, one was Garibaldi, and one was Mazzini. So this way you can link with the history aspect as well. Now again, we are talking about INS Vikrant, and it is not it cannot be without discussion. We have to discuss about what future and what strategic importance, what geopolitical significance it has. We all know about China's ambitious we can call it imperialistic claims. Now recently we have also come to know there is speculation that now Solomon Islands has also become an ally of China. So in that case, now Solomon Islands, although it is in the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean realm is very important from the point of view of our nation India, and strategically we have to keep hold over it, not exactly hold, we have to protect our maritime security, and INS Vikrant is one of those special entities which will help us safeguard our coastal borders. So I have just again prepared a map for you. Okay, so sorry about that. So this is the Chinese power play. We have now that old Silk Route was different. Now China is not only hell bent upon developing, expanding its influence throughout the throughout Asia, then Europe and Africa by its land routes, the new land Silk Route, but also the maritime Silk Route. And since we are talking specifically about the Navy, so this needs to be discussed. So as you can see that the major maritime routes, the container ports which sail towards the towards other regions, what routes they take place, I have just mentioned in brief. So here I hope it is visible to you. So here we have an important port in China, that is Qingdao. Then we have Tianjin, Shanghai, Xiamen, Guangzhou. Then we have Singapore. Then of course Hambantota is there in Sri Lanka. So this arrow, this dotted line, it shows what normally the container ports or how the Chinese ships are traveling all across the continents or all across the maritime boundaries and trying to establish its influence. Then we have if we go along, here we have other small island nations like Seychelles and Mauritius. Then we have this, these have been recently in news. We have here the Dar es Salaam port, then we have the Mombasa, then we have the Djibouti port, the port of Aden, I have just highlighted in. Then we have the Sokhna port in Egypt, we have the Haifa port in Israel, then we have the Piraeus port in Greece, and finally all the way to Italy. So this is how Chinese influence is spreading. So you can see here a lot of mapping is also involved, which will help you not only in the prelims but also in the mains. Then again this additional structure which I have highlighted in green, some of the African countries which are there. So basically these green, these indicate the important cities, and the East African Standard Gauge Railway, which is in the pipeline China is developing in association with the African countries. So here again this becomes important if you recognize the countries. So this color is specially I have put so that these border countries, and often lot of mapping questions this time in prelims, lot of mapping questions especially from Africa, which is always prone, always vulnerable to conflict. And recently you might have heard this Somalia region and this Ethiopia region is going to, there is a doubt or speculation that soon it is going to suffer from famine. Anyways, so we have this Ethiopia, capital Addis Ababa. Then we have South Sudan, capital Juba. We have the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Kisangani is an important inland port. It is not the capital of South Sudan, DRC. Then we have Uganda, Kampala. Then we have Mombasa. Then we have Lomu. This is Kenya. This I have just skipped by mistake. This is the capital of Kenya, that is Nairobi. And again Nairobi, lot of conventions keep on taking place in Nairobi, so these places should be kept in mind. So this was a brief discussion of how China is expanding its influence. Moving on again. So all these relations that I am trying to establish now, this is not an entirely different when we are talking about Navy. So whatever is in the news, so we have to discuss that. So the new naval ensign, it's not ensign, I checked the pronunciation on Google, so it's ensign. Basically if you have seen the pirate ships, they usually use that skull structure to distinguish themselves from other decent or sober ships. Anyway, so every country, the navy of every country uses some flag, so that the countries of in the other maritime domain or other border, the patrols or the other organization, other countries can recognize the country with which they are associated with it. And so this is a brief history of the naval ensign. Now this was the recently which we have adopted. This is the recently adopted by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So the difference, if you can observe, we'll go to the history right now. So initially, of course, our Navy had its legacy in the British, from the British, has inherited legacy from the British. So initially during the course of independence, this was the flag or the ensign that was used by the Indian Navy. This is the St. George's Cross, and this is the flag of UK. And it was only on January 26, 1915 that a changeover to Indianized pattern was made. Then after that, slowly we had evolved to this. In 2001, it was a change was made. We still retained the George's Cross. There is but Ashoka's emblem in the middle, and we have the our Indian tricolor in the top left corner. Then further, 2004, again, since we are slowly and gradually shedding the shadow of our colonial rulers, so again this flag was retained, and here we have the Ashoka emblem sitting atop an anchor. So 2004 was, but now what the problem came was, since this is the blue in color, so there was some issue, there were some complaints from various ship organizations, the Navy, that this symbol merges with the blue sky and the blue waters of the oceans, and it is hard for it to distinguish. So after all this, we have finally come to this color. So you can observe significant differences between the two. Now we have retained the Indian tricolor on the top left, but here we can see that there is an octagonal shape. There is a golden Ashoka emblem atop, again an anchor, and the most interesting feature is that this golden border which has been provided to this feature, or this sign, represents the naval prowess or the naval supremacy of Chhatrapati Shivaji. We'll be discussing that. Rest, if you in detail, you can read the text if you need, but basically this I have discussed. There is nothing greater, more important to discuss. You can just pause the video and have a look at this. So again, this was in news. Again, Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveiled the Indian Navy's new ensign at Cochin Shipyard Limited at Kochi, and he specifically said that it is a symbol of self-reliance. So again, the new naval ensign bears the seal of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, whose navy gave his enemies sleepless nights. So this was the quotation that was used by our Honorable Prime Minister, and this I have, just to make things interesting, I have put in a nice illustration of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Then now some facts I have just pointed down, which we have some of the aspects we have discussed. So we had discussed the new ensign has the national flag on the upper canton, that is the top left, and a blue octagon encompassing the national emblem sitting atop an anchor. And if you observe carefully, there is a small, this is not visible, but this is a motto of the Indian Navy in the Devanagari script, which translates to this: "Some know Varuna" in the Devanagari script. Then again, the octagonal shape which we had discussed, it emphasizes upon the multi-dimensional capability of the Indian Navy. So we have some concepts like the float, the fight, we have the destroyers, the frigates, so it is. And again, when we are talking, giving special emphasis, we are time and again linking it with the Maratha warriors. So again, the Indian Navy has always acknowledged the seafaring prowess of the Marathas, and there is even a training establishment in Lonavala, which is christened as INS Shivaji, and there is also an administrative hub establishment by the name of INS Angre, after Kanoji Angre, who was a celebrated Maratha naval commander. So these are some, again, we have discussed the relation. How many aspects we have discussed till now? We have just discussed about geography, we have discussed about the international relations, we have discussed about history, and not only modern history, medieval history also, the world history. So you can see all, of course polity is also involved. I had written this text because when this ensign was to be changed, so a lot of clamor was there about whether to adopt it. So there is always with our issue with our what I am talking about. So anyways, now this is the different types of ships. Now these questions, I will also discuss a previous year prelims question which is related to this. It appeared in 2016. So here you can see some of the important, the categories which we have to discuss. This is in different colors. So we have the carriers, the aircraft carriers, which we have, of which INS Vikrant is the part. Then we have the destroyers. Now destroyers, as you can gauge by the name, destroyer is basically a very heavy battleship. It is specifically designed or established for battling with huge missiles, torpedoes, guns, and whatnot. And lastly, we have the frigate. Now frigate is, we can say, it is a smaller version of destroyer. It is a lightweight battleship, and it also enhances the mobility and maneuverability of the ships. So in some places when the destroyers cannot reach, in layman terms, or destroyers cannot access the shallow seas, then the frigates become very important. So these are the three main classes or categories of ships that are important. So some features and we'll discuss. Now INS Virat. Now don't confuse it. We'll be also discussing some of the Indian Navy submarines. There is also a nuclear powered submarine by the name of Virat. So don't confuse it. This carrier has been decommissioned in 2017, and it was again commissioned in 1959 by the British Royal Navy, and it is the longest serving carrier in the world. Moving forward, this is INS Vikramaditya, modified KF class from Russia. You don't need to concentrate on each and every term, but right now we have the two major the aircraft carriers which have enhanced the capability, majorly enhanced the capability of the Indian Navy. So this is INS Vikrant, which is the first indigenous carrier, and together they have enhanced, or they have made the Indian Navy more powerful. Then this is INS Vishal. Now this is an old ship, not I don't think it is in function. I've just put it for the purpose of data. This is the Cato bar. So this term, although not very important, maybe it can be asked in the prelims. So Cato bar, it stands for this is the full form. I'm lucky to have memorized it. So this is, if the writing is not very legible, I'm sorry for that, but I'll just narrate it. The catapult assisted take off with barrier assisted recovery. So this technology, because we're talking about aircraft carrier, so this is an old technology. Again, now this INS Vikrant is has built upon a simplified version and a more modern version of this Cato bar, which is known as Stowe bar. Okay, so this is the assisted takeoff recovery, but without the catapult. This is the simple technology, simplified technology, and basically you don't need to remember the full forms. You just need to know the terms. Then we have the INS and the destroyers. Some categories are there. So, and we have the classes as well. We have the INS Mysore, Delhi, Mumbai, the INS Rajput Rana, Ranjit, Ranveer. Then there's some projects you might have heard, like Project 15, Project 15B. Then we have the Kolkata class. It belongs to the Project 15A. If you have recently observed from the this INS Vikrant, there was the test firing of the Barak 8 missiles which have been procured from Israel. So then we have the Vishakhapatnam. The feature is stealth guided missile destroyers, Project 15B. These are just some of the features. Then we have the frigates. So INS Talwar is very popular. It time and again pops up in the news. This is the improvement of Kriva class used by Russia. Then we have the Shivalik class. This belongs to Project 17, and this Project 17A Nilgiri class. These are being developed at Garden Reach in Kolkata and Mazgaon in Mumbai. So some facts which can you need to just give a read and keep in mind. Now we have already talked about ships, we have talked about destroyers, frigates, aircraft carriers. Now how can we leave the submarines behind? So basically we are not talking about Subway sandwich, that is not a very good joke anyways. So submarines also we have two types, that is the nuclear powered and the diesel electric. So I was talking about this Arihant. So this is nuclear powered. Nuclear powered has two classes, Arihant class and Akula class. Again there are two major ships, INS Arihant and INS Aridhaman. Then Akula class we have one major submarine which is INS Chakra. Then we have the diesel electric submarine. In this we have the Sindhu Ghosh class, Shishu Kumar class, Kalvari class, and here are some of the names. So here we have the INS Kalvari, you might have heard of, INS Khanderi also you might have heard of. Here I have given the legend. This yellow ones are the commissioned, these purple ones are undergoing sea trials, and these green ones, INS Aridhiman and this INS Karanj, they are under construction. So some of the facts which this table I specially made and colored it for you, so you can just even some of the facts you can remember. Okay, so we are nearing the end of this discussion, but again, like every time I have this that habit, I have an endeavor to make a link with whatever type of questions are there in the prelims. So this was a question in prelims 2016. So best description of INS Ashtadharini. So here we have four options, you can read it: amphibious warfare ship, nuclear powered submarine, torpedo launch and recovery vessel, nuclear powered aircraft carrier. Now although I would have discussed the option, but you can just go through the question, and the answer here is torpedo launch and recovery vessel. So these type of questions we have discussed, and this can come in the exam. So sample question, this is for GS 3, and because when we are talking about indigenization, make in India, so this technology in the GS paper 3 we have a topic about the contribution of Indians in the field of science and technology, the indigenization, the recent research and technologies which are being developed. So this is not only GS 3, but it also somewhat we have read a lot about the GS 2 portion, the IR portion also, and GS 1 the history portion. But when we are talking about the indigenization of technology, this becomes a very important concept or question topic from the point of view of GS 3, that is science and tech. So you can critically analyze this. Indigenization has matured, but a large gap still exists. You can attempt this answer. Now this is an important directive word, that is critically analyze. You cannot take these directive words. Sometimes we use the directive words explain, discussed, examine, critically examine. So all these have a purpose. The examiner is just not writing it just for the sake of it. It has a, so when we say analyze, we have to break that question into its constituent parts. So if we break this question into the constituent parts, we have the indigenization has matured in Indian Navy. This becomes one part. You can give an introduction, some sort of fact about the Indian Navy, INS Vikrant or whatever, but just don't write it in the form of story. So we have the introduction, and when we go to the body, so it can have shall have two parts. One is this Indian Navy, how it has matured. You can talk about the technologies, the developments. You can take examples of nuclear power submarines, the diesel electric, the destroyers, frigates, how they are encompassing or strategically, geopolitically protecting the Indian Ocean realm and posing a counter to the Chinese influence, and how you can relate it further, expand it to the Indo-Pacific, not in detail, but you can briefly mention. And still again there is a large gap still exists. What are the shortcomings, or what aspects, what are the further critical aspects which need to be emphasized, because still we need to progress very far. There is a long journey ahead of us, and we need to emphasize upon this. And critically is that we have analyzed the body, and critically means you have to discuss both the pros and cons which will be included in the body, and you have to arrive at a conclusion which normally is neutral in nature, because you have discussed both both pros and cons. You can deviate to prefer one side, either pro and con, but more or less the conclusion needs to be neutral. It has to be balanced. So this is how the question needs to be attempted. So again, concluding this, although this is not the end, some basic prelims facts I'll be discussing. So this is again sort of a conclusion you can write. It might take another 5-6 months for INS Vikrant to be combat ready with assimilating, assembling all its hangars with the latest aircrafts and whatnot. And currently we have flying sorties and the surface to air Barak missiles from Israel, which are being tested from launched from the ship. So there was an also clip displayed in the news channels. Then again, so we have two major aircraft carriers with us right now, that is, one is INS Vikrant and one is INS Vikramaditya, and this would solve the Navy's problem of continuing its naval operations even as the other ship goes for maintenance. Because obviously we have talked about the depreciating assets. So it's sort of in layman terms, when a thing gathers rust and we have to renovate that material by galvanizing it or making it into an alloy. So similarly, if there is some problem which can appear in the another ship, which is a destroyer or aircraft carrier or maybe a frigate, so these ships, when we have a large fleet, so one ship will always complement the other. So this is the topic which we have completed. So now, as I promised, some miscellaneous facts. So you might have heard about this concept. Recently it was in news. That is DSA, or Dark Sky Association. We can also call it the Dark Sky Reserve. Now basically, what is a dark sky reserve? It basically connotes, it is in relation with the astronomical observatories. It is a type of a park or a reserve which surrounds an astronomical observatory. So if I draw a rough diagram of an observatory, okay, and here's the telescope. So for observing different planets and the cosmos basically. So what happens is that a reserve is built around it, and there is the specific is that it is a reserve, it is a kind of remote place, but the most important thing that this reserve should adhere to is that it should be devoid of any light pollution. Now I hope you are not reading this term for the first time. Light pollution is also a type of pollution. Again, if a lot of, in layman terms, if a lot of light is around, buildings and roads and street lights, so it will interfere with the telescope's ability to measure the wavelengths, the micrometer wavelengths, or the capability. It will hinder its capability. So this is the basic concept. Now the important point comes in that where is this dark sky reserve is being developed in India. This is a place known as Hanle in Ladakh. This place is atop the Mount Saraswati peak. Some facts. And there is a valley, the Chamthung Valley. The pronunciation is not exactly accurate, but I'll show you the map, which is the most important part here. So again, I'm not going to show you a static map, I'm going to show you a real-time map. So this is, I found this. So here if I zoom in, we all know that this portion is, this is the Ladakh, the UT. and we had discussed, if you remember in the last lecture, about the solar power plant. We had discussed that there is this part in Himachal, that is the Kaza solar power plant. Then if we just so this is the actual valley, the Changthang. This is the wildlife sanctuary, and this entire valley is the Changthang valley where it is situated. So here you can see that this is the ocean Hanle. So this is Hanle, and if we here the dark sky reserve is being developed, and if we further maximize it, so this you can see is the Hanle river. Here some peaks are there, you can see, and if I just again zoom out here, you can see some of the other important features here. So this we had here is the Hanle. So if I just mark it with the help of so here this was the place of Hanle, and here we have the disputed territories with China. This is the Aksai Chin. Then we have this Leh. This is the Kargil, and here we have the Pangong Lake. So all these features, you can see how they are associated with one another. So this you can, I have just enlarged it further. This is again Gilgit-Baltistan area. Again there was this POK, this is the part of POK, and recently there was a lot of clamor by the people. They were not happy with the management, of course, that is obvious. This upstairs is the in the north side is the Shaksgam Valley, which was ceded to China by Pakistan. So this is the thing. Rest we all know. So this is one important mapping thing which I wanted to discuss with you. Another thing is regarding the culture. One or two more points. I will not take much time. This is the one recent, a lot of states have their local harvest festivals. So one recent festival known as Noakhai Juhar was in place. This is a harvest festival of Odisha, and this is for the harvest, during the harvest of rice. And this takes place again, if we the Hindu calendar, if you go in the climate section of the India Physical Environment of Geography, you have a table with all the seasons according to the Indian calendar, that is Chaitra, Vaishakh. So this season right now is the Bhadra season, that is August to September. So these 2 or 3 facts, they can be kept in mind. And last but not the least, recently we have celebrated the Teachers' Day. Again, just a fact, it is the birthday of Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, first vice president but second president, okay, after Dr. Rajendra Prasad. And to conclude, I'll just quote what an important quotation which was used by Dr. Radhakrishnan, that a true teacher is one who makes the students think of them, who enables the students think of themselves. So with that is what I aim to strive for. I want you to open your minds to develop your own individuality, and whatever I am teaching, take it as a platform, take it as a base. I'm not saying you need to follow my guidance, or I'm just trying to assimilate and compile the important facts, and I'm trying to inspire you and motivate you to move further ahead in life. So with that, we'll meet again next time. So I'll bid adieu. So Jai Hind.